Today's topic, how to complete the Form 8606 for your Backdoor Roth IRA 2025 edition. That's right. We are back after our great video from last year where we walked through the 8606 and the 1040, which for us smaller boutique channels, the video was a gem. We had over 9,000 views, almost 140 likes, 37 comments, and we actually didn't post that video till late in the tax season. We posted that in March. So we are back again. Because of the success of that video, we're going to do it all over again. But this time, we're going to do it for the 2025 taxes. So we'll walk through the 2025 1040. We'll walk through the 2025 8606. We will give you real life examples. As I always note, I am not a CPA. I am a CFP. While I love tax planning and I love to nerd out with the best of them, you should also take tax advice only from your accountant, CPA, EA. And if you do have a complicated tax return, as this form can get very complicated, especially if you have pro rata basis issues, this is not the video for you. This video is your more straightforward money in, convert, clean 8606, but we'll walk through all the lines. We'll walk through the 1040, and we will continue to build our 8606 empire year after year. So let's get into it. Quick favor to ask before we jump into the content. If you have not subscribed to the video, please subscribe to the channel. Allow us to get even more views, continue to build our 8606 fan club here. Give us a thumbs up to continue to share this message, and click on the bell icon to get a notification every time we release a new video like this one, like we do weekly. If you're looking for a great financial advising team that loves backdoor Roth IRAs, please go to our website, wealthkill.com. You can click schedule now in the top right corner to schedule an icebreaker call. No cost introduction to our firm to make sure to be a good fit. That's it. That's the pitch. All right. 8606. So this video will not be a walkthrough on how to do the backdoor Roth. I'm assuming that if you were nerdy enough to search the 8606, you've already done the backdoor Roth. We're just trying to figure out how the heck do we report this now? Or you've just heard about the 8606 and you thought to myself, I have never completed that form ever in my life, nor have I seen what I need in my taxes, even from my accountant. All common stuff. So let's actually jump into this first. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to come in here hot today. So first thing I want to do, let me get up. I'm going to show one website. So if you do a simple 8606 search, this is where you're going to come across. So this is the 8606. As I always have to say, again, I am not a CPA, so I'm not giving you tax advice. I'm just walking you through what we see time and time again and giving you tidbits from a CFP, not an accountant. But the first thing here is this instruction. So this instructions for Form 8606. This is a great PDF. I have this already opened. Now this is going to be the 2024 version. So is this. This is also the 2024 version. Luckily, the IRS has already released what we consider drafts of all the 2025 tax forms, or at least most of the 2025 tax forms. So I'm not going to click on this now, but by the time you're watching this video, these links should be updated. And then if you click on those links, so here is the 2025 instructions for the 8606. Now this is a draft. If you scoot up here, right, it's going to say caution, draft, not for filing, because it's not official form yet. It's not completed yet. But as we sit here now, these should all be pretty close, but just keep in mind that there still can be some changes. Here is the 8606. We will nerd out on this in a second. You can see I have the 2025 version, but let's first take a peek at something known as the 1040. And believe it or not, I actually joked about this in last year's video, but the lines are the same. But the 2025 tax return, at least the draft version, does look different. But I like to come here first because if you're watching this video and you have done backdoor Roths in the past, there is a very good chance that either you or your accountant may have made mistakes. And I'm going to show you the easiest place to spot those mistakes in about 2 seconds here. That is not throwing shade at accountants. And what I mean by that is a lot of us will complete backdoor Roth IRAs, but we actually don't supply any documents then to our accountants. The accountants aren't going to know you did this by just, magical fairy dust. You need to explain that you did this. Or at a bare minimum, you need to send them the 1099 that was triggered from the IRA, right? Because remember, a backdoor Roth IRA, I'm not going to walk you through the steps, but you had to make a contribution to an IRA, a traditional IRA first, and then convert it to your Roth. That triggers a 1099. So if you submit that 1099 to your accountant, ideally your accountant would say, hey, you seem a little bit young to be pulling money out of your IRA. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. You're right. I did a Roth conversion, a backdoor Roth IRA. And then that's the Roth conversion showing up. And that's what at least trigger a conversation. But if you don't tell your accountant that, they likely don't know that. So it's either missed completely or it's being reported incorrectly. So first place to spot this is right here. It's one line. You got to go to line 4A. In a perfect world, now remember, this is 2025. Max contribution, $7,000 for those of us under the age of 50. So in a perfect world, you would actually see a 7,000 here. You might see a little bit more if you invested that in cash. Now I try to add layers to this, but not too nerdy. We do follow the step doctrine. So for example, when our firm does a backdoor Roth for our clients, we usually like to wait at least 30 days to show that we clearly were adding steps in between there. The IRS has never released official guidance on what that number is in terms of time. Some advisors will do the next day. Some will wait a month. Some will wait a quarter. Some will wait a year. We don't really have great guidance on that, but we do at least we like to be a little bit nerdy and add that step doctrine in there. So why do I bring that up? Well, when a client puts in $7,000, it's going to sit there in cash. It's going to earn a little bit of yield. Now, it's not invested per se, but we're going to get some interest. So what happens? Let's just say that this turned into $7,025, right? So their 1099 showed $7,025 because $25 of that was interest. Now, if you did the backdoor Roth appropriately, right, and you followed all the correct steps, the taxable amount here should only be 25 buckaroos, right? That $7,000 was basis. The extra $25 was the interest or the gain. If you invested it, maybe it was higher than that. We don't love that idea, but to each their own. But anything above that basis would be taxable. So keep an eye on that. What you don't want to see is this. That is not what you want to see. That is an accountant or you that had no idea that you did a backdoor Roth. They got a 1099 that showed $7,025, and they assume that you actually just took a withdrawal from your IRA. And they're going to list all of it here as taxable. Now, this is a new line. I'll be honest, I'm not going to be the biggest pro. I try to read the instructions on if you'll be able to list like a backdoor Roth here. They didn't really give a great example, but you might be able to even list something of that nature in here. I wonder if accountants will maybe even list. They're probably not going to mark backdoor Roth. While technically the IRS knows it happens, you don't really want to shout that from the rooftop. So it'll be interesting to see what box starts getting checked here for this to show that, hey, there was some type of exclusion there. The other thing you don't want to see is this. You did a backdoor Roth IRA, and this isn't here. And if your tax return looks like that, I'm also going to make a pretty good assumption that you don't have an 8606 either. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, a lot of things to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind here is let's assume this is married filing jointly. You and your spouse both did backdoor Roths. So in this example, let's say it was $14,050, right? So you both did $7,000. You each gained $25 of interest. Remember now, in a perfect world, if we did this right, this is $50, right? $25 from each you. Now, while you can combine those on the 1040, you each need to have your own 8606. All right, so do not forget that. You both need to have your own 8606. While you can report them both here, you both need 8606s. Okay, that is the easiest place to spot it. Let's jump into, I'm just checking I have handwritten notes, I have typed notes. I don't want to miss a thing for any of you. So let's go now to the 8606. So 2025, this actually looks pretty darn similar to last year's. They did move a few things to the next page here. But what are we looking at here? Let's make this a little bit bigger. So line 1 is your non-deductible contributions made up until January 1. Right? So this is actually up until early 26. So this is any that you titled for 2025. So if you're watching this video in early 26 and you're just now making your contribution for 25, you can list that here. So this is your non-deductible contribution to the traditional IRA for 2025, including those from January 1 to April 15th, or whenever you file your taxes. Remember, that's actually the deadline when you file your taxes. Now, if you had other basis, which this is where I noted earlier, that this video, we're not going to get overly complicated. Now, a common spot here would be, let's just say you were trying to accomplish two backdoor Roths in one given year. Like, for example, this time of year, you can technically go backwards, right? You can still do a 25 and you can do a 2026. That's a pretty common occurrence where there might be more than a zero here. So just stick with me, basic math. The goal of today's video is a simple backdoor Roth IRA 8606, meaning you put the money in a given year, you convert it in that given year. So you made the contribution on January 3rd, 2026, and then you converted it on March 3rd, 2026, and you're all done in that year. It's nice and clean. I always call this the clean version. If we get into basis, numerous years, this video will not cover that. One, because I don't feel like I'm the person to walk you through that. But two, if it's a serious pro rata issue or you even had past mistakes, this can get relatively complicated pretty quickly. And that's where we'll note, it's probably a good idea to bring an accountant, a CPA, to even just get things cleaned up and organized. All right, so keep walking through this. So in a perfect world, you're pretty organized up until this point. Contribution, add the two lines together, there you go. Now, walking through these here, this would also be enter those contributions included on line one that were made in the new year. So for example, let's just say that you made this contribution. Well, let's say you're watching this video, right? You're watching this video now in January of 26, maybe even February 26 by this point, and you did it backwards for 25, and this is the 2025 tax return. That number could be listed here, right? That number could be listed here. So in a perfect world, you're going to have this 7,000 shown up here on line 5, that nice, clean, tidy, remember, same year is how we're referring to it. Now, most accountants, just want to make sure my notes are aligned here. Most accountants will actually kind of keep lines 4 through 13 blank. They'll keep it more simple. They'll kind of put notes in some of the statement pages maybe. But the whole goal there would be that if you had a true, clean backdoor Roth IRA, there's actually nothing that's going to change here. So while you can go ahead and enter all this information in here, which I've gone ahead and done, because I did this in last year's video too, so I added those in there. There's really no major changes that would occur here, assuming that we're just doing clean. Now, if you do have old basis and we have pro rata issues, this section is vital, very important. And that also leads me to my next point. If you do have basis, even though some accountants will say it's a pain in the butt, you should complete the 8606 every single year. Why, Chad? That seems like overkill. Yes, if you think you're going to stay with the same accountant for the rest of your life, it might be overkill because ideally they're tracking this. What happens though if you change accountants? What happens if your accountant retires? What happens there if you lose track of this basis? Remember, basis means money you've already paid tax on to Uncle Sam, and you lose track of that somewhere along the way, you are going to be setting up a tax bomb that you don't need to have go essentially explode, right? You would be paying taxes on money you've already paid taxes on. The 8606 for any of those of you with basis that is going from year to year, right? It's not this clean conversion year after year. You need to make sure this is on file every single year. At best, most accountants will say, hey, give me your last 2 years of tax return. So if you have a gap anywhere of 1 to 2 years and you lose track of this and you weren't tracking it on your own, you could be creating a tax bomb. So keep an eye on that. So, all right, let's head down to page 2 of the 8606. Part 1 here, again, this is kind of the messy pro rata issues. For the bulk of you watching this video, you're going to pretty much head down to this part here, part 2. Now, I highlighted line 16. That is because if you read this one, don't worry about part 1 because we skipped that one. Otherwise, enter the net amount you converted from your traditional IRA to your Roth in 2025. The net amount. So I used a clean 7,000, but if you go back to my other example and you actually had $25 of interest, that number would actually say 7,025. I'm just using 25 as a random number. You would get this off of your 1099. And then line 17. Again, skip the part 1 because that we're not doing the pro rata stuff here. Otherwise, enter your basis in the amount on line 16. Your basis, right? So on this one, your basis is 7,000. That's what you've already paid taxes on. So now it says we'll subtract line 17 from 16. So you're going to have 25 buckaroos in here. That's your taxable amount. That is what will show up on, you guessed it, line 4B. It's amazing how they all actually work together, right? So that is your 8606. We don't even go through these other lines down here. These are distributions from Roth IRAs. Again, that's not the intent of this video. This is a pure 8606. You made the contribution and the conversion in the same year. Even if you're doing one right now, you're watching this video in early 26 and you're doing it backwards, your form will not look at this clean, right? Because you do have that extra line there where you actually did one backwards. So this is a true call it intra-year contribution and conversion. So that should be the main topics there. I'm actually going to pull out of my screen share. Actually, before I leave here, I'm just saying again, line 4 is very telling. That is your first example. One, if you want to do any quality control checks on past tax returns, or if you want to do a quality control check on your most recent tax return, right, or your most recent tax draft, ideally, this is exactly why we ask all of our clients, accountants, that we want to see the draft. We want to see the tax draft before, because we know more about this situation in terms of the money movement than the accountant will. The accountant's only going to get those documents and then have to fill out this form. Again, more of a reactive world where the advisors are usually the proactive world. So that's why we like to review these, because one quick little note, oh, hey, that was a backdoor Roth. Boom, fixed in a few minutes. Don't have to amend taxes, nothing. So line 4, very important. And then 8606. If you're doing a backdoor Roth IRA, you need to file the 8606 every year. You need to get this filed. Ideally, it's as simple as I'm trying to make it here, and you had a nice clean year. If you have pro rata issues, again, this is not a how-to on how to do the backdoor Roth IRA. But remember, if you thought you've been doing a backdoor Roth IRA all these years, but then you actually had a simple IRA, a SEP IRA, or a traditional IRA where you weren't converting the entire amount, because remember, on a backdoor Roth, yes, you put your $7,000 into the traditional IRA, but then you convert it over so that on 12/31 the balance is zero. That does not count, right? We're talking about a larger account that's rolling over year after year. If you have those in place, simple, not that common today, SEP pretty common. This is why we prefer the solo K over the SEP IRA, or a traditional IRA, and you have been doing backdoor Roths, but you don't have an 8606, you don't see anything on your line 4A, that's where things can get messy. And I noted here, remember, this video is about backdoor Roths. When we get into the topics of Roth conversions, which are usually something that you're doing later, usually after retirement when income drops, this line will be different. So don't get those confused. Backdoor Roths, 8606, different than a Roth conversion. All right, so that should be good there. Let's pull out of this screen share. So we're going to get this one out a little bit earlier this year. Ideally, it gives even more people a chance to watch this video, complete their 8606. I know we're using the drafts, but even if there are small tweaks, they should not be major to what we reviewed here for both the 1040 and the 8606. We had 37 comments last year. If you have comments, questions, concerns, drop those below. If you go to last year's video, one thing you're going to notice about all those comments, I jump in and respond to all of them. Even if it's overly complicated and I say, hey, that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, I look to talk to an accountant, I will still make that note. If it's something simple and straightforward and it's something we've seen, I'll always make a note of that. But like I said, from our 24 video to an hour 25 video, I hope to do this every single year now going forward as a place for you all to come back, check your work, at least see an extra set of eyes, and get these going the right way. Best of all, good job on doing your backdoor Roth. That's one of my favorite things to do. So kudos on getting that done. As always, thanks for hanging out with me. Last 15 minutes or so, maybe a little bit over on this one. And as always, I'll catch you on the next video.